The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus told his disciples this parable. A man going on a journey called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one, he gave 5 talents. To another, 2. To another, 1. To each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug a pit in the ground and hid his master's money there. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not winnow. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here it is, have it. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not winnowed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The gospel of the Lord. Wait, Bishop, I hope they are not going to do this to us Nigerians. That maybe we have been burying our 1 talent. Actually, the talents we seem to have been burying in Nigeria is not just 1 talent. We got 5, right? Some countries got half, some got 1, some got 2. And they have been multiplying it. And in our society, in our country, we got like 5 talents. And we buried it in the ground. May we soon come to recognize that when a people are blessed with human and natural resources in abundance as we are, they are meant to be invested. And they are meant to be returned with profit. Our society has been blessed with wonderful, intelligent, creative, ingenious people. I mean, we see our young people all over the place. Even the ingenuity that many young people apply to criminality, the ingenuity we see displayed in criminality demonstrates the rich talent that we have been gifted with. I hope you know that in a place like America, when people display a measure of ingenuity in crime, organizations like FBI are interested. So while they are in prison, organizations like FBI, CIA, they go to meet such people to harvest something of their ingenuity, of their creativity. Because the same creativity used in crime, the same ingenuity used in crime can be channeled positively. And they have harvested a lot of that from criminals, so-called criminals. And when those ones are now given opportunity to blossom, they blossom very, very well. A lot of people leave this country and go to other countries, and they blossom. They do well. They flourish. Which is why we are told, I hope many of you have been reading it, we are told that of all racial and ethnic and national groups in the U.S., the most academically qualified are Nigerians per capita. If you take Indians as a group, take Chinese as a group, take Japanese as a group, take whatever. If you take Nigerians as a group, we have the most qualified national group in America. Meaning that some of the most sophisticated places, workplaces, you have Nigerians playing critical, technical roles. And at home, we chase them away. In fact, rather than use those talents and skills and gifts here, we make our talented people go and start begging to wash plates. Some of those people that are making waves now, they started by washing plates in restaurants because they didn't have papers at the beginning. I hope you know. Whereas our own society needs those talents, and we are burying those talents in the ground. May all Christians who hear this gospel today, who read this gospel in their churches today, it's the same gospel that major churches read. Same gospel. May they recognize that in this country, we have been burying our talents and returning the talents to the master exactly as he gave out without interest. May we know how to invest in our youth population. May we know how to invest in the intelligent, ingenious, smart young people that are all over the streets that seem to have no choice but to resort to crime today. May we learn how to invest in them for the future of our society. If we do not invest in them, they will invest somehow. They say, an idle man is the devil's workshop. What we saw displayed in the last few weeks in our country, the violence that came after the NSAS protest, that violence is an evidence of how, clear demonstration of how the idle mind is the devil's workshop. Because I have kept saying that, those who are working in CBN, those working in NCC, those working in LNG, NNPC, those who are busy in our private schools, secondary schools, universities, they couldn't have been out to loot and destroy because they were busy at 11 o'clock in their office, right? They were busy at 11 o'clock in their office, maybe on the 10th floor of a high-rise building. They could not have been out. Most of those who were out looting and vandalizing, they were people who would be on the streets anyway because they have no job. May we learn how to invest in our youth population. Those who are investing in their pockets, those who are investing Nigerian resources in Dubai and in America and in England, those who are wasting our resources living by conspicuous consumption, living lives that are not allowed, lives that should, the kind of lives of affluence that should not happen in a place that is as poor as this. May they quickly learn that for their own future, for the future of their children, may they learn how to invest in the children of their neighbors. May we all learn how to invest in the children of our neighbors rather than using the resources to build higher walls. We have been deceived all the while. And I hope what happened in the last few weeks has taught us that it is not about the height of our walls. It is not about how much we have, electrified fences. It is not about how much we have this massive iron bars. That for your security, you need to take care of the children of your neighbors. Can you say that together? For your own security, you need to take care of the children of your neighbors. A word is enough for the wise. Now, lead questions for today. Question number 1. The woman in the first reading is presented to us as a model on account of some godly virtues. There are godly virtues that are displayed, that are talked about in that first reading. And she is presented to us as a model on account of some virtues, godly virtues. What are these godly virtues? Question 2. What point is St. Paul making in today's second reading from Thessalonians? He's making a critical point that we shouldn't miss. What point is that? Question 3. How do you see God? What do you believe about God? Now, how does the way you see God influence the way you live your life daily? Question 4. Listen. What is the link, if any, between last Sunday's gospel, if you remember, it is about the parable of the wise and the foolish virgins, Matthew chapter 25, verse 1 to 13, and today's parable of the talents, Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 to 30. Is there a link? What is the link? And how are you personally challenged by the message? If there is one message that links last Sunday's gospel to this Sunday's gospel and perhaps next Sunday's gospel, if there is one message, then how does that message challenge you personally? Yes, Kenneth.
I want to answer question 1.
Yes, go ahead.
The godly virtues for the model woman in the first reading are, number 1, God-fearing.
The woman is God-fearing, yes.
Number 2, she's hardworking.
Industriousness, hardworking, yes.
Number 3, she's generous to the poor.
She is generous particularly to the poor, yes.
And the needy.
The poor and the needy. She is God-fearing, and because she is God-fearing, she is using her talents skillfully. She is industrious. She is hardworking. Yeah. And then she is not using the fruit of her labor for herself alone. She is sharing, especially with the poor and the needy. Give her a round of applause. Yes, Bishop.
I'd like to answer question 4.
Yes.
I believe that the link between last Sunday's reading, this Sunday's reading, next Sunday's reading, and even between the reading from Luke chapter 16, verse 8, is all around priorities. It's about beginning with the end in mind.
Okay, so first, beginning with the end in mind. 2 is about priorities. Okay?
What is important. And it's also about investing and talents and using what God has given us to secure for us our lives in heaven.
Using what God has given us today to secure a place tomorrow. You see, like the parable of the smart steward, right? The crafty steward. Who knew? How much do you owe my master? 400 bags of rice. Oh, yeah, make it 50. How much? Using the place he had, the managerial position he had at that time, to prepare for.
And finally, just to harp on that, Luke 16, verse 8, that for the children of the world are more vigilant in dealing with their own generation.
Some translations say the children of the world are smarter. They are smarter than the children of light. They know how to use what they have to prepare for what they would need tomorrow.
So for me, it has challenged me. It's always challenged me. I think that, Father, this particular reading and your homily on it many years ago in Asokoro was a big source of personal transformation from me.
Do you still remember that Asokoro homily?
Yes, I do. And it really transformed me that day to start to think about how to use the gifts and the talents that God has given me, of which there are plenty, to actually do things that are beyond myself.
To do things beyond myself. Please take note of that last expression. To do things. Each one of us is called upon to do things beyond ourselves. No, it's remaining. Okay, how you are challenged. That's the way you are challenged. To use God's gifts and talents to do things beyond myself. Give him a round. Yes, Mike.
Going from Brother Chris's answer, question number 4, I want to answer question number 2. Church highlights end of time towards the end of the year of the liturgical year.
Towards the end of the liturgical year, our readings highlight the theme of the end time.
And that is exactly what Paul is talking about, second reading of today, that we need to be eternally vigilant and be awake and sober, knowing that surely the end will come. Christ will come again. And we shall all be called to account for how we have lived.
You know,
be prepared.
You know, Mike, my mother's favorite song. Recently, I sang it with her, and then it was shared on a number of our local WhatsApps. Akasine hoza oka kenyi sezuve. Isenuve vana juzi nyangada. Isezuve vana juzi nyangada. Atuvoy wagodo. Atuvoy wagodo. The song is saying, let no one, don't think that my 98-year-old mother cannot sing. Don't think that, don't be so self-conceited. Don't be so full of yourself to say nothing can happen. Don't be so idiotic to say nothing can happen, because what can happen is all over the place. Let us just pray for long life. Let us just pray for, that's what the song is saying. Because in their self-conceit, in their satisfaction, like a drunken person, he says, nothing can happen. I mean, we used to have in this country, a lot of the SARS people will say, I'll waste you and nothing will happen. Yeah. Is something happening now? Yes, it may take time, but something can happen. Don't be so idiotic, so foolish to say nothing can happen. And a lot of people are living their lives in that way. Believing nothing, because we have this little opportunity today, we say nothing can happen. Anything can happen. By this time last week, did we know that today Jerry Rollins will not be alive? No. And is it only his? Because he's a popular person. The number of people who have passed on between last Sunday and this Sunday. So something can happen. And God has decided that we won't know when it will be. So every day we live our life recognizing that something can happen.
So we are called, like the wise virgins, like the industrious woman, the wife, as well as the hardworking servants who use their talents to ensure that whatever God has given to us, we are using it to prepare for his coming, because he will call us to account. We should live every day, said, if it is the last, because we don't really know when it comes.
We shall be called to account. To whom much is given from him, much is expected. We shall be called to account. Thank you. What questions remaining? Question 3. Question 3.
Let me attempt question number 3. The way I see God, how that influences my daily life. First of all, I see God as a generous God.
God is a generous God.
I see God as a compassionate God.
Now, is that deep into your subconscious? Can you see that in your dreams?
Yes.
Can you see that deep in your bones, in your guts? Because I'm trying to say, not how do you see God in your head, but how do you see God in your guts? What is your gut feeling about God?
That's essentially what I see God as, and if it influences the way I relate to others.
Do you teach your children and your family every day about the generosity and compassion of God?
Indeed, and I let them know that we are not made for ourselves, that we are actually here to serve, to cooperate with God, to serve humanity, to get a place for ourselves and for others in the heavenly kingdom of God. So those perceptions or ideas about God influences my conduct. For instance, when I give somebody a piece of work to do for me, and the person disappoints, I say to myself, I disappoint God most times, and He's compassionate and merciful to me. So it enables me to forgive that person and to move on.
So forgiveness is one of the behaviors that result from your seeing God as generous.
Generous and
so you
compassionate.
see God as generous and loving and forgiving, then it prompts you to forgive. Yes?
And what I have as much as
Right now, as we are sitting down here, as we are standing here, how many people offended you that you have not forgiven?
But I
Think first. Don't answer me automatic. Think first.
No, there's none.
Uh-huh.
And again, as a generous God, whatever He puts in my possession, I count it as a gift, just like the talents that were given to servants and master. I need to make it work for other people as well.
For the benefit of other people.
So it's not just for me. Thank you.
Okay. The book of Proverbs presents us with a simple village housewife and mother. I mean, if you look at the way the Bible presents people, most of the people presented in the Bible as models for us are not celebrities. This is why Christians, believers, should be careful about how fascinated we get about celebrities. Because the models presented to us from Genesis to Revelation, hardly do you find popular, powerful celebrities. Even with the human tendency and proclivity for wanting to be celebrities and popular, but just look at the people presented to us. She was not a celebrity. She was not a beauty queen. She was not a woman of glamour. She was not a successful businesswoman. But she used her God-given gift and lived out her state in life as a simple housewife and mother, loving and caring, wise and industrious, God-fearing and virtuous. She had something more valuable than beauty, glamour, or wealth. What did she have? A loving heart. A loving heart is more precious than any material endowment. A loving heart. Now, the simple woman was concerned not only about her husband or for her husband and her children, but also for her neighbors, especially the poor. And this is where we have failed woefully in this country, many of us. And we just keep fooling ourselves, thinking that we can be safe. Look, this country has a tapestry that it is just, when you are wrong and you are wrong, you will end up being wrong. Isn't it? The roads are not good. You buy heavy SUV. You buy a heavy SUV, huge one, so that when you jump on the bad road, you will not be expected. So you have taken care of yourself and leave the rest of the people. There is no security. You are a big man. You go to police and get police escorts to follow you to the village each time or all over the place. There is no public power supply. You go and get a huge generator. So you keep taking care of yourself and neglecting others. The environment is not secure. You get barbed wire. You get big iron bars to protect yourself, to put yourself inside the prison of your own house. Prisons are very safe places. But they are prisons, isn't it? Prisons are safe because of the long, tall walls and so on. But they are prisons. They're not desirable for children of God to live in prison. But this is what the mistake we keep making is that we can take care of ourselves and that the rest of the society, well, and that we are all right. Everyone to himself, God for all. I say everyone to himself, God is not there. I keep saying, nature abhors a situation where you have islands of wealth amidst a sea of poverty. Just imagine it. Islands of wealth amidst a sea of poverty. You know what will happen? The flood will come and the sea of poverty will swallow up the islands of wealth. The logic is easy to understand. Nature abhors such a situation. Nature will do its balancing. See the number of times that, in Lagos, Babbage has flooded Victoria Island. The nature abhors that situation. There's always balancing that happens with nature. Something is seriously wrong if the well-being of our family does not extend to enrich the community around us. Can we repeat that together? Something is seriously wrong if the well-being of our family does not extend to enrich the community around us. Recently, we lost, in the course of the week, I think we lost Balarabe Musa, right? Balarabe Musa belonged to the same camp as the late Aminu Khan. And they were the champions of the Talakawa. They were people. Balarabe Musa was invited to join the Polo Club. He was registered by friends. Come and join Polo Club. And he said, no, it is a symbol of the extremely rich oppressing the poor. I can't be identified with that. This is former governor, for those of you who don't know. And he lived his life in simplicity from the time we knew him till he died. In simplicity. Former governor. Because we wanted to carry out bad politics, he was impeached, right? He was impeached. That's one governor that was successfully impeached in Nigeria. The first, yes. But go and investigate, and you'll discover that he was standing for principle. Absolutely. And clueless people decided to check him out of there. You cannot. Something is seriously wrong if the well-being of my family does not extend to enrich the community around me. Something is wrong. Now, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. In the midst of widespread speculation about the end time and when it will happen, we are dealing with the second reading now. St. Paul admonishes believers in our second reading not to waste precious time with such speculation. Instead, he urges us, can you read it? To live our lives here and now in the light of the future, which we have already begun to participate in through baptism. That future we are talking about is already begun because we are baptized people. He says, be watchful. Live your lives as if the Lord is to come the very next moment. We already know the gospel story. The master on his way abroad entrusted his property to his servants. Gives 5 talents and 2 talents and 1 talent to the servants. According to, can you see the last part of the sentence? According to their ability. So he was not, how do you call it? He was not partial. He gave each one to the full capacity of each one's ability. I mean, if you had 3 children, for example, and one of your sons is 25 years old, and another is 5 years old, and you are giving them money for investment, will you give the same amount? No. He gave according to each person's capacity. Now, the first and the second went and made 100% gain out of it. The master returns and goes through their account. The first two servants came and rendered their account. The third servant decided to blame his failure to do anything on the master. The master orders that the 1 talent be taken from him and given to the one who has 10, so that the one who has will have more. Then the unfaithful servant was thrown into the dark where they will be weeping, gnashing of teeth. Now, who is the master? Jesus is the master on his way abroad who risks his property in the hands of his servant. Just know that God has risked his treasures into our hands. Jesus is the one who handed his treasures of immense value to us, expected us to invest the treasures and make maximum gain, left and ascended to the Father, will return to settle his accounts with us, will reward those who are faithful in small things with greater treasures, will throw out into the dark the unfaithful servant who misuses the talents or buries their treasure. The gospel of Christ itself, the Christian faith itself, apart from our natural endowments, they are a dynamic treasure. Use the gospel wisely or you will lose it. So the Christian faith, the gospel, the love of God in Christ, the sacraments, etc. These are the gifts and the talents we're talking about. They are the treasures that have been handed over to us. They are meant to be invested wisely and not buried in the ground. There is no room for laziness in the Christian boats. Do we say that together? There is no room for laziness in the Christian boat. You are either paddling actively or you will sink. Imagine yourself on the river and you think you can just be floating. You are either actively paddling or you will sink. You cannot just be floating. Yes, our Christian faith should be alive and active, strong and dynamic, fruitful and enterprising, creative and transformative, beneficial to neighbor and godly and oriented to the kingdom. You know, in this country, at least, many parts of this country agree. Whatever biases the Yorubas have against the Igbos or the Hausas have against the Igbos, most people agree that if you want to entrepreneurship, that the Igbos have it more than many others. Abi, you may not like the person from Newi, but you know that if you give 100,000 to the person in Newi and give the same 100,000 to an Ibira person, that the Newi person will return after 1 year, maybe with 100,000 more, and that the Ibira person may bring 10,000 additional. It is not an insult. That's the way it is. So, just as the Newi person is enterprising when you give him some money to invest. My friend, Professor Johnny, my classmate, was telling me, he said, look, that his aunt, his niece came, and he said, okay, collect this 60,000 or something, go and invest. He said, if you do that for somebody from the middle belt, she will go and buy a phone of 40,000 and use the remaining to get shoe and whatever. Give that same money to somebody from Newi, and we will start a business that in 5 years you'll be surprised. So we need to learn something from one another, don't we? That's why our diversity in this country is very useful. Our diversity is very useful because we can learn something from one another. Anyway, all of us Christians, we are supposed to be like Newi people in entrepreneurship. Even the Chilebeles people are not as good as Newi people. It's from Ebonyi. Chilebele, you agree, Abi? Hey, look with, you are learning from them. So all of us need to learn from them. Entrepreneurship, being enterprising. We often envy those who live glamorous lives, my dear friends. We often envy those who live on the fast lane, those who gain enormous wealth, those who acquire great popularity, Those who occupy high public office, we often envy them. Those who are crowned beauty queens, those who are music celebrities, sports celebrities, film celebrities, TV celebrities, we often envy them. But let's face it, we know that people on the fast lane, celebrities and wealthy or influential public figures, are not necessarily happier than the rest of us. In our sober moments, we know this, right? That they are not necessarily happier than the rest of us who live simple, ordinary lives. Actually, in their quiet moments, celebrities do admire people who live simple, ordinary lives. In their quiet moments, celebrities who go around with bouncers, who cannot go anywhere alone, they wish they can go to Wuse Market. Right? They wish they can walk around Wuse Market to go and stand by the suya man there and be eating the suya there. They wish they could do that. But this is the nature of human beings. We keep being envious and whatever of people who have what we wish we could have and we don't have. After all the showbiz, after all the glamour in public, the personal lives of many celebrities are often what? Empty, painful, depressing. Name them. I mean, from the life of before Michael Jackson was the first rock musician. Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson. What is this one? This one that sang "Sexual Feeling." Marvin Gaye. All of them, one after the other. By the time they see these 20, 30, 40,000 people in front of them and they are performing, it looks wonderful. But you go and ask their managers, go and ask their doctors. Maybe that very night, after this wonderful display, they may be needing drugs because they are depressed. That's the nature of things. Not all that glitters is gold. Things are not the way they seem. Can we say it together? Things are not the way they seem. Many things just appear to be. They are not the way they seem. Now, but we are all gifted. And the point I want to make is we are all gifted. We are all gifted. And God has given us all the abundant gifts we need. If it is necessary, we have it. If it is necessary for our lives, we have it. The higher gifts of God, the gifts that lead to lasting happiness and fulfillment, have been given in sufficient quantity to everyone. So God has provided all we need. They are, above all, the spiritual gifts has been given in sufficient quantity to everyone. The non-tangible gifts that we need for everlasting life has been given to everyone. Faith and baptism, love and forgiveness, truth and light, the gospel and the sacraments, our prayers. God, the Lord has taught all of us prayers. Isn't it? When you pray, say, our Father, the Lord has given us a guide. He has taught us all. How well have we been using all these gifts and more? In addition, there are those who are endowed with a lot of material wealth. In addition to these others, there are those who have been given material wealth. To make use of the gift, of money or wealth, and not to hoard it for themselves or their family. Those who use their gifts according to God's purpose will use their money and gifts to further God's kingdom and not seek to build kingdoms for themselves in this world. You don't need to build kingdom for yourself in this world, because vanity of vanities, you are going to live. And as Jesus says in the parable of the rich fool, this hoard of yours, whose shall it be? Look, no matter the amount of property you leave on earth by the time you die, you are not in control of what happens to those properties. You can say you want to guarantee abundant life for your children and grandchildren. But you know what? Within 5 years, those properties may be other people's. So, this hoard of yours, whose shall they be? So let's say together, the Christian faith is a gift and a task. An endowment as well as a mission. Meaning that the Christian faith is something that has been given to us, right? That's a gift. Something that has been packaged and given to us. But at the same time, it is a task. What does that mean? It's an assignment. It's something to do. It's work to be done. So when you say Christian faith can be conceived as a gift, a package that you have been given, but at the same time, it is a task you have been given. Job description. Next. At the end of the day, what matters is not the particular gifts or how much of them we have, but how they are developed and utilized in the service of God and humanity. Pope Francis says, do not bury your talents. No. Bet on great ideals instead of doing Nigeria. But bet on great ideals. Ideals that enlarge the heart. The ideals of service that will make your talents fruitful. Life is given to us not to jealously preserve it for ourselves, but to give it out to others. Life is given to us not to jealously preserve it, but to give it to others. So can we read again together? Do not bury your talents. Bet on great ideals. Ideals that enlarge the heart. The ideals of service that will make your talents fruitful. Life is given to us not to jealously preserve it for ourselves, but to give it to others. Was it last Sunday or the Sunday before when I was talking, I'm reviewing what happened with the post-EndSARS destruction and vandalization, and I said, all of us, each one of us that is a little privileged, that is sure of breakfast tomorrow and lunch and dinner, that is sure of paying school fees next term for children, we need to begin to adopt somebody, to foster somebody, to support somebody from the streets. All of us. I will say that each one of us should aim at 2 or 3 people that we are supporting so that they may not end up on the streets. Otherwise, you and I are not safe. Help me tell your neighbor that if it is only you, your family you are taking care of, you and your family are not safe. Help me tell your neighbor. Help me tell him or her that time is running out. Better act now. If you don't know what to do, you can approach me. Oh, people will tell me, oh, it is very risky. And you bring somebody close to you, and then they may begin to rob you. They may begin to whatever. No work of God has no risk. To risk nothing is God himself risked his only son for love of humanity. See John 3:16. God so loved the world that he sent his only son. Then God takes a risk with us every day. Jesus challenges us to take risks every day on account of him. Mark chapter 8, verse 34, verse 38. Risk taking, on the other hand, is what? Produces gain, advances growth, enhances life, promotes the kingdom. We say you are an investment person. Can you make any gains without taking risk? Investment is about taking a risk. It's a gamble, some kind of gamble. It's taking a risk. But risk taking produces gain. I mean, it used to be that it is people who take the risk of traveling. In those days when traveling was very hazardous, there were no aeroplanes, there were no whatever, and people travel on horseback or travel on foot and so on and so forth. Or, as in recent time, people travel by sea and travel 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks before they reach Europe or America. Now, it was risky, isn't it? But it is that risk that produces gain. All the gain a lot of people in the world, in the developed world, have today is because they took risks. So to think that you can make gain without taking risks, you want to be safe. You want to be safe. You make no gain. Fear and laziness. What do? They kill initiatives. They stunt growth. They cause paralysis. they bring about death. Many people are too afraid. Too afraid. Risk-taking is an integral part of the Christian enterprise. There is risk in trusting God completely, isn't it? Yes. There is risk in abandoning all to follow God. There is risk in fighting for justice and integrity. There is risk in entering into solidarity with the poor and the oppressed. There is risk in practicing Christian generosity, hospitality, and compassion. Like I said, if you open your door to visitors, to strangers, which the Bible recommends, right? Which Jesus recommends. But if you open your door to strangers, there is risk in it. You could get robbed. But there is no Christian life without risk. Those who are so paranoid about security, about their security, they will never be able to do anything generous. They will never be able to do any Christian heroic thing because you are too concerned about yourself. Faith versus fear. Faith and fear, they don't go together. In the gospel of Jesus, being afraid is equal to having no faith. Faith in God comes with confidence in his love, in his protection, in his mercy, in his compassion. Recall the audacious faith of the Canaanite woman. Matthew chapter 15, verse 21, 28. The one whose daughter, Jesus Christ, says, we cannot take the food that belongs to the house people and give it to the dogs. And have faith, her audacious faith said, oh yes, but the dogs are entitled to the crumbs that fall from the master's table. Then, the kind of faith that St. Paul demonstrates in Romans chapter 8, verse 31 to 39. I am convinced, he first of all says that I know that all things work unto good for me because of the love of God. And that nothing can come between us and the love of God made visible in Christ. Is it persecution? Is it armed robbery? Is it violence? Is it vandalization? Is it nothing? He says, whether it is principalities here under the earth or above, I am convinced that God's love for me is so powerful, so strong, that none of these things can come between me and the love of God. Please go back and read that passage. Romans chapter 8, verse 31 to 39. And let us see how our own faith is weak compared to the faith of St. Paul, and how we should aspire for that kind of commitment. So, how we see God influences our attitudes and behaviors and even our level of happiness. Can we say that together?
How we see God influences our attitudes
and are you surprised that even our level of happiness, how we see God? Because I hope you know that our level of happiness comes from our thinking. No external circumstances can affect our happiness. It is how we process those external circumstances that result in sadness or happiness. Do you agree with that? Poverty? No, it cannot cause unhappiness. There are people poorer than you. Joblessness? No, it can't cause unhappiness because there are people who have been jobless for longer than you. Sickness? No, because there are people who are more sick than you and who are running around helping others very happily. So, no external circumstance can cause you unhappiness. It is what you do with the circumstance. So, it is the way you see God that is often responsible for your level of happiness. Now, the God of the third servant, you see, the third servant in the parable was a hard taskmaster, a strict lawgiver, a callous judge, a fierce administrator of rewards and punishments. That's the kind of God he thought he had. But the God of Jesus Christ is gracious king, a loving father, caring shepherd, boundless lover, whose only demand is that we be like him in giving lavishly and loving boundlessly. So, you are what you believe. I had this done when we were doing trauma healing, to help people to recognize that what you think about God affects your level of happiness, affects your level of depression or lack of it. It is not what happens to you. It is not that you lost your loved one. It is not that you lost your best child or your only child. It is not that you don't have a husband. No, that's not what makes you unhappy. What makes you unhappy is what you think about God, if you are a believer. Now, let me read the lines in blue, and you read the lines in red opposite. If you believe that we have a good and loving God, the kind that Chidebere was describing, if you believe we have a good and loving God who controls everything that happens in the universe,
you are likely to trust that God means well, even when you don't understand, that it shall all be well. God knows best.
and if you believe that the world is arbitrary, meaning no one is in control, that no one is in charge, that there is no purpose or meaning, and that events are a matter of chance,
You are likely to slide into depression, hopelessness, and despair when the storms of life rage.
if you believe that God is punitive, vindictive, and rapacious, like the God of the third person in today's parable,
You are likely to live your life in anxiety, fear, and distress.
you know, he said, I was afraid of you because I had heard that you are like this, like I was afraid of you. That's why I went to bury. So it is a punitive God he thought he had, and a vindictive and rapacious one. So he lived in fear. And the same thing happens to us. So you are what you believe, and you become eventually what you believe. You see, our core beliefs are our source of meaning and our happiness. What you believe is what is responsible for your sense of meaning and what is responsible for your happiness. So something happens to you. Some serious tragedy happens to you. Then you process it through your belief. You don't know. It's subconscious. You will process it through your belief, and then you will respond. Why me? Why me? Or whatever. Say all kinds of things. And then you decide to commit suicide, or you decide to do some terrible, stupid thing. So what you believe is very important. And parents who are raising children, be careful. What you expose your children to eventually believe about God, about life, is very important as to the quality of life they will live, their sense of meaning. You remember when I told you that I went to a secondary school and I asked what about their purpose and the kind of things they were telling me, and I said, no, that can't be your purpose. Your purpose in life cannot be to be a celebrity. Oh, no. There has to be something bigger. There has to be something more abundant, something that will benefit the world. That is your purpose, not just for you to be a celebrity, just to be popular. Viktor Frankl, in his classic book, Man's Search for Meaning, said, those who have a why, actually he was quoting Friedrich Nietzsche, those who have a why to live can bear with any how. Can you say that together? Those who have a why to live can bear with any how. If you, I mean, I have mentioned that book several times, and I think it has even been shared on our platforms, the soft copy, Man's Search for Meaning. Google it. There are soft copies available by Viktor Frankl. Man's Search for Meaning. Those who have it. If you have a why, meaning the reason for your existence, meaning you have a relationship with a God who is good, who is generous, who is forgiving, who loves you, then you can cope with anyhow. So, how do you see God? And how does the way you see God influence the way you live your life daily? Do you now understand this point? How do you see God? And how does the way you see God influence the way you live your life daily? I wrote this poem several years ago. I call it Excellence. Excellence. Attempt to do something great and fail, rather than attempt to do nothing and succeed. What did I say? Attempt to do something great and fail, rather than attempt to do nothing and succeed. I said, be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. Don't die. Refuse to die. Tell God you are ashamed to die because you have not done something. In all you do, aim for the best and do your best. Isn't this the stuff of which excellence is born? Find that in Flames of Truth. Heavenly Father, we thank you, we praise you, we glorify your holy name. Thank you for your love and your goodness. Thank you for demonstrating to us you are not a cold, punitive, rapacious God. You are a loving, generous, and forgiving God who has blessed us with abundant gifts and talents, including the gift of our baptism, our Christian faith. Apart from the natural endowments you have given to us, you have given us the gift of eternal life in Christ. Help us to use these gifts profitably. Help us to touch other lives positively by the way we use our gifts. Help us to measure our success in using our gifts by reaching out to others. Help my brothers and sisters in this country to recognize that their greatness will be measured by how they lift others up. Help us to destroy the concept of I pass my neighbor. Let it be that I help my neighbor to grow. Let it be that I help my neighbor to rise. Lord, help us to change our philosophy of life so that our society may be better on account of our using our various gifts and talents. Help the leaders of this country to nurture the gifts that the young people have, that they may live meaningful lives here, and at the end of the day, may be admitted into your kingdom through Christ our Lord.